napkin and wipe the inside of my water bottle, and it's so grimy.
Jeremy, wait, the people are gonna know about your water bottle. Um,
Oh, I'm not gonna
that's
drink
so
it.
funny. All right, friends, say welcome back. I'm so sorry about your water bottle, by the way. Friends, welcome back to the Angular live stream. Here's what's really interesting. I've heard through many, many comments that people want to see us more, Jeremy. They want to be a part of the story longer and more. They want us on air. So they missed us. They've missed us a lot. Like my
Yeah,
camera angle is bad. Hold on.
we skipped last month, right?
We had to skip quite a bit because we had Google I/O, then we had the release, then we had work and work and work and work and
Yeah,
work. So,
I went on vacation too.
and you went on vacation. All right, let's say hi to some of our friends who are tuning in from all over the world. What's up, Meherdeep? What's going on? Kashan, what's up in the building? Ania, what's up, my guy? Good to see you, Kashan. Reactor, Angular, everything's great. jQuery from Jeremy. Let's see. Okay, these oh, that's everybody just talking to each other for the first like few minutes. All right. David Gutierrez, what's going on? What's up, Jeremy? Wow, he's only want to say hi to you. Well, that's messed up. What about me?
Howdy.
Wait. Uh-oh. Does Google use Angular? Maybe. Let's see who else is here. Danny Paredes. What's up? What's up? Is it recorded? Yes, it is. NG add Enia to the core. We can Enia is a great part of the community. So great. So grateful. Pex Terry, finally catch it live. Well, thank you for coming by. It's so many friends. All right, let's see. Anybody else? I want to say hi to people. Let's see, Vitali. So I go back and I look at all the recordings, and it's like 2 minutes of me saying hi to people. But I think people want this, so we have to.
Quick question: is my shirt causing a moire pattern?
Yes, it is actually.
Okay.
That's why we always say no stripes on camera.
Okay.
But
Should
this
I
is
go
fine.
change my shirt, or should I just
No,
leave it? Leave this one out for next time.
no. When we do our next event and you have to be on camera, then I'll say no stripes. But for this, it's fine.
It's trippy.
What's up, Joe? Evgeny, what's going on? Good to see you. Hello, production code. Alcatraz01, what up? Pavel, what up? What up? What up? What up? Let's see. Alpha Frost, I know you're into Grouse. You listen to Opeth. It is okay. You know what? I do not listen to them, but I will check them out. I just found out about this other band called We Prevail, something in silence we prevail. No, Slaughter to Prevail. Slaughter to Prevail. And the guy Alex Terrible, he does this thing where he growls. So Jeremy, you'd be interested in this.
What is this? I have no idea what you're talking
So
about.
it's I think they might be black metal, maybe, but it's a metal band called Slaughter to Prevail. And the lead singer is called Alex Terrible. Alex Terrible does like this demon voice naturally with his vocal cords, where he does like a second thing where it's like the regular growl, but he adds something to it. But he's famous for getting on stage, silencing the crowd during the show, and then screaming his growl with no microphone. It is really like something.
So how is the growl different from Christian Bale's Batman voice?
It's pretty close.
I'm Batman. No, are you different?
Okay, let's keep saying hi to people. That's pretty good joke though. Borderland Life, what's going on? Michael, what's up? Hey, Esther, what's up? Mihaela, what's up? What's going on? What's going on? Sudi Hindra, what's going on? Let's see, Raphael, Darth Vader in the building.
I am your father.
All right, let's see. Strong, I think that's how you say it. Hello from Vietnam. Hello. Organization. All right, Enrique, what's going on? Oh yeah, it was good to meet you in Berlin. Thanks for being a supporter of the team and of the live stream. Okay, Navneet. Hello. Let's see. Aaron, what's up from Ghana coming through? David, happy to be here. Happy to have you. Welcome. Glad that you're here. What up, Chow? All right. Johan was good. Good. Okay, I'm going to say hi to a couple more people, then we got to get started. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today.
Yeah. Mark, what have you been up to lately? I think you've been doing some travel.
Yeah, I've been traveling. So we had Google I/O. So I was in Shoreline. I was in Berlin. I was in Atlanta. The last time we streamed, Jeremy, I was supposed to be going to Budapest for an event, and then I had some medical issues that slowed me down, unfortunately. So I wasn't able to go to Budapest. But yeah, I've been busy. I started. Let's see. I've watched some shows. I've been playing lots of guitar. Yeah, I just been so busy. It was so busy. But yeah, Berlin was cool. Berlin was cool. Met a lot of great developers there, a lot of community members. It was really excellent. Where'd you go for vacation? Can you share?
Mostly I stayed home, but I did take a little weekend trip to a place called Orcas Island here in Washington State, which is this very beautiful island, like a few hours north of Seattle that you have to take a ferry to, and did some kayaking, a lot of hiking.
Okay.
And I also finished an honor mode run of Baldur's Gate 3, which is the real achievement here.
Okay, so I saw you playing on Steam Deck because I turned on my Steam Deck for the first time in like 6 months, and I saw you playing, and I was gonna message you. I'm like, you know what? He's busy. I'm not gonna get involved here.
I crave attention, Mark.
All right.
On Steam.
Okay, well, next time I see you on Steam at the same time, because I started the game that we talked about. So, friends at home, this is something you don't know about me. I don't traditionally like roguelike games. I don't think they're fun before. Now I'm starting to give it a try because the framing just was like, why would I play this game and then die, have to start over? That just didn't make sense to me. But now I'm framing it as get so good that you don't die. And that to me makes it interesting.
Yeah, that's the way.
Yeah,
nothing beats that feeling of dying a whole bunch and then like getting just all the right items and getting the right build and just bulldozing through it.
Yeah. All right, so that feels good. Wait, Alpha Fox says Slaughter to Prevail, double skull. Hopefully that's a good double skull because I am, I don't know about all their music. I just know that song is good. Let's see, worked on Angular today. Okay, David, let's go. All right, we got to show some people some stuff.
Let's show some stuff. So
it is hard to understand my English. Maybe I'm talking too fast. Let me slow it down a little bit. All right, let's see. We'll answer some questions in a second. I'm going to add it.
Yeah.
But let's show some stuff. We launched stuff.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and add my screen to the broadcast here. So can you see my IDE and my browser here?
Yeah, but I'm going to tell you this. The people have asked you to do something. So let's show off some of the cool stuff, and then they want you to do this. Can you build a form with a forum group today? I know how to do it, but I want to see it once again done by professionals.
Oh, see, you're asking me to do my weakness because I've worked with the forms module very little.
Listen, it'll be fun today. So let's just show some stuff. What can we show them, Jeremy?
So I want to show, at the very least, the new let syntax, which you can't. My strong here is not applying because the headers are always bold. I feel like I need to do just a little say H1.
Wait, what?
Hold on.
Wait, what?
There we go.
What?
Let's write some code. That's the pun was important. So.
Wait. Why did I? Okay, so am I the only person out here who was surprised by the use of a style tag in the template? Anybody else surprised by that? That you can do that?
You could do this.
Yeah, I didn't know.
This has always worked.
Sure, but it's just exciting to have kind of like seen something new that I'm like, I didn't know you could do this. See, people did not know you could do this.
Look, you could do anything you want on a live stream.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, but look, see, people say, hey, is that new? Like,
no, that's not new. It's literally always worked since the initial release of Angular. And yes, this gets style encapsulated the same as anything else. So if I look at this in DevTools here, oh boy, why are my DevTools so cluttered?
I remember when there were only 2 tabs down there, and now it's like 1,000.
I want the styles on the right, not on the bottom. How do I make you be on the right? Okay.
There you go.
So yeah, if I look at this H1 here, you'll see like this H1 has this encapsulated attribute on here. So this is even still encapsulated.
Oh, okay. Wait, somebody could you just do something real quick? They said, can you use a signal inside the style tag to like set that property, for example?
I don't think that's allowed. I think we explicitly forbid that. But let's show you what error you would get if you tried to do it. So let's just go to our app component here. We'll say color equals blue. Oops. And then here we'll just say color. So
we don't like it. We don't like the property there.
This is not allowed. Because if I then go into this here and look at this H1 again, we'll see color is actually, it's just trying to set it to that literal color. So
yeah,
we explicitly don't allow you to put bindings inside of CSS. We don't consider that like a feature that Angular supports. It's interesting. You don't get an error though. Maybe it should be an error rather than just kind of using the the raw interpolation expression.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'll stop interrupting you with my shock and awe of like that you can do that. I know it always works, but it's just so, just like, wait, what?
So yeah, we have a new syntax here. So this is kind of similar to the if and for and switch and defer syntax, which we call block syntax. And this is let. So I'm going to say let count. And Mark, how many viewers do we have on the live stream right now?
888.
888. Okay.
Well, now it's almost 8. It was 893. Now people are still joining us.
I'm skeptical, but I'll put in your number here. Yeah. So this is right now showing up as red here in WebStorm because WebStorm hasn't updated with the latest syntax yet. So WebStorm doesn't recognize this. I'm going to post the link to the issue on the WebStorm issue tracker about this if you want an update on that. I think if you use VS Code with the Angular plugin there, then this will work fine. You won't see any red here. But so what I'm doing here is I'm declaring a variable here in a template. And so then I can just come right here and say, hello, count livestream friends. And you can see over here on my browser, which I'll zoom in a bit, then that shows up right there. So super straightforward. I declared a variable here, and then I referenced it here. But we can do a little bit more than that. So let's go over here, and let's introduce. Let's just say we're going to make a count number here, which is equal to 0, and then we're going to introduce just a little input here, and we're going to bind this value is that count, and on actually we'll also say like type number, and then on the input event we're just going to say count equals $event dot value, or no, $event dot target dot value is what I want. That should probably work. And so we're going to get rid of that real quick. And so count does not exist on.
Yeah, because you just, why not?
Oh, I just didn't save.
Oh, I was like, wait, why not?
I just didn't save. And then it says object is possibly null. Event.target, I guess, could be null. So I'm just gonna, I know it's not. The type here, it doesn't know. So here, let's just add a handler. So update count, and we'll pass that event. And then great WebStorm feature here, I can just say create that method. And we know that this is an input event, which we know. And so then we can say this dot count equals, I'm not going to call that $event, that's just event dot target dot. Why don't you have a value? Because you should be of type HTML. Whatever. Event a target as HTML input element. I know it's an input element. Dot value.
There you go. Cast away.
And oh yeah. So
wait, why doesn't it like it? Because
value is typed as a string, so I know it's also a number here. So
just put a plus. Get that number out of there.
No, this is the better way.
A plus sign is less characters.
Fine. This is the pattern in Google though, is you use the number constructor for this. What am I doing wrong? Event is not assignable. The input event. Then like this input event should be, I'm like, here, we're gonna.
Let's see, the streets are telling us add hashtag input in the HTML input and use input that value in the event listener. So you can do a
yeah, that's smarter. I'll just do that.
Yeah.
Input here. Count equals the input dot. I feel like there's some bug here with the event type, because I feel like the event type should be smart enough to know what's going on here. Now what are you complaining about? See, you should know that this is type number here. So maybe there's some bug here.
So pass it back to your handler then, I guess.
I'll use your check mark. Well, okay.
Oh, you did the plus. Oh.
All right. So
save
all that. All right.
There you go.
So now, we got this here.
Look how nice that plus is. That looks so good.
I'm just gonna put that in a div here, so we're getting the right block layout here. So, we got all our stuff here. And so what I wanted to show off after all of this, so now I can say let inflated count, and I really want to inflate the viewers we have, is equal to our, I'm going to say count times 100. And so now I'm going to change this to the inflated count.
15, you got to put the L. No, on line 15.
Oh, infaded. I see.
That's my new band name, Infaded.
Infaded.
And so now, as I type in here, you'll see that the variable stays up to date with this expression. So as I change count, this inflated count also updates, right? So,
and Jeremy, tell the people why it's updating and not giving you an error, because the value is changing. Why is that?
Because that's the way the feature works.
But I guess I was more heading toward the fact that because of the update of the change station cycle, right? It's gonna reevaluate, but it's not reassigning.
Right. So you can kind of think of it like this. This right here is the same as if you had made a dynamic expression like count times 100 here, right? So you could almost imagine this like that. But this is unnecessary, right? Because we have this let syntax here. We know that this is an expression, so we don't need to make you put extra boilerplate there. So this is a live dynamic expression that's always going to keep this variable up to date. We had a lot of debate about the naming for this syntax. Right? A lot of people were saying well, shouldn't it be const? And it's well, const isn't really a good fit, because this value does change, right? So as I'm changing count here, the value of inflated count, it does change. So const isn't really a good fit. And, it does work slightly different from the let in TypeScript or JavaScript, because rather than just being a value that's set once, this is a live expression that stays up to date over time. And ultimately, we settled on let because we think that this is the thing that's going to be most intuitive to the most developers.
Can you also do this? Can you create a button? Well, actually, I don't want to drive for you. You go ahead. I know you got some more examples you're going to do.
Well, we can also use multiple of these, right? So I can also say let audience size is equal to inflated count greater than 1,000. Huge. Okay. Right. And so let's put these in paragraph tags. So there's line breaks. And so let's say the audience is audience size. And so you can see, like, you can use these just like you would anything else in an Angular template, right? So as I type here's this gets it, and that gets used. And so, you know, I'm using a ternary here. You can use anything that you would normally be able to use in an Angular template expression, including other variables.
Right.
Yeah, I see a question in the chat, like, why not at var? And it's like, well, var is also, you know, it's something that exists in JavaScript, and we have reached a point in JavaScript where it's like, well, like, you should really never use var.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of confusing to, like, keep in your head, like, never use var in JavaScript, but then, like, do use it in Angular templates. So we wanted to avoid that confusion as well.
Oh, we got a couple of good questions that we should definitely call out. First off, shout out to Web350 coming over from X. That's how a lot of people count followers as well. Listen, I hear that. But this is a good one. So the question is, can you declare let anywhere in the HTML? Is it hoisted? So you can declare anywhere in the view. However, it is not hoisted like a JavaScript variable.
And we can see this by, like, right here, I'll just put inflated count here above its declaration. And you can see cannot read let declaration before it has been defined. So you get a pretty straightforward error if you try to do that.
Yeah. So good one. Can you put it inside of a new view and then try to access it outside of that view?
So if you were to do something like ng template here, right? And I were to try to move inflated count inside of there, that is going to fail because the inflated count here does not exist in this context here. So this, like, ng template is creating effectively a lexical scope. And this is constrained within this lexical scope. If I were to change this to ng container, that does work because this container is not creating, like, a different lexical scope.
And so I'm using the language view here on purpose, but is that what you mean when you say, like, the lexical scope? Because
I'm talking about it in terms of programming language semantics, right?
Oh, sure. I just want to make sure that my understanding is also correct because I want to use, like, you know, people are loving this thing.
Let's try. Hold on, before we go any further, let's try it with an if, right? Like if true, right? And then do that in there. And so here we get that error again, right? Does not exist here because, again, like, similar based on what you were saying, Mark, right? Like, if and for and switch, those all create a view, which in programming language semantics are introducing a new lexical context in which this is defined. And so it's no longer defined in the context of the rest of this template.
Okay, good. Here's another question. Nejmal says, what will happen if you use a template variable with the same name as a class property?
Let's find out.
Yeah, let's do it. That's a good use case.
Let's say inflated count number equals 999 here. And so I got no error. And if I come in here and I write this in, it still works the same as it did before. So the inflated count here is actually shadowing. This class member.
Oh, do this then. Do this. Can you also put on your template p tag with this, you know, an interpolation this dot inflated count?
Yeah. So let's come here and we can just say there's p. We say this dot inflated count.
Okay, let's see.
That doesn't do what I expected it to.
That's not what I thought either. I did not think that. Somebody says this. Oh, here's a good like check here. Victor says can you move it before the let on 15 and see what happens?
Yep. So you put that there. Oh, cannot read let declaration before it has been defined. So yeah, it doesn't want to let you do this.
So what about this dot inflated count on line 15? What happens if you do that?
Now still
Wow. Wait,
oh,
what?
That's very weird. This is a bug. This is definitely a bug. We've discovered.
What?
Let's do this.
That's awesome though, in a way, just because we discovered this. Right, that's definitely a bug.
It just does nothing. Oh, that's funny.
It's a feature. Okay, so if you declare it after, so if you reference it after it's been declared, it will shadow the property. If you reference it before, it won't throw an error, but it also won't output anything. So I wonder if the true output, just for kicks and giggles, can you open your console of your browser and let's see what's in the HTML for the bug?
Oh, I bet it's just going to be nothing. Yeah, it's just nothing.
It's not even undefined or anything? Because I was wondering if it's like undefined or something weird happening.
It's just nothing. Well,
Okay.
because so the text interpolation syntax here is always going to result in a string.
Oh, I see.
So this is going to like give you an empty string rather than like null or undefined. So I see someone in the chat says there's like there might be a PR that fixes this already. Let's go check. So this would be definitely something from Christian here. And I don't see anything. Might have been. So there's some. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'll bring this up.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you have this here, it should explicitly go to the class rather than the template variable.
Right. Totally agree.
Good work, live stream. We found a bug.
That's awesome. Good job. I wish I had like emotions to like for the live stream. I don't have any of that stuff set up, but I would love a cheering thing. That is awesome. I'm so glad that we just like experimented and found that. We're gonna get her. Oh, somebody said, don't forget to link the live stream recording on the GitHub issue. That's actually pretty funny. I don't know.
Watch this hour-long live stream and you'll see a bug.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh, we can answer some questions. People have been waiting for some more questions. Live stream driven development. I like that. Let's go back to the question. Are there any plans to move Angular to toolchain to Vite?
So we do use Vite already in Angular CLI exclusively for its dev server. And right now, Angular's compilation architecture isn't compatible with the way that Vite does its processing because Vite relies on the fact that files can be transformed on a one-to-one basis. And that's unfortunately not true in Angular because of the existence of ng modules. Ng modules make it so that you can have changes to the behavior of a file based on the content of another file through the ng module, right? So you have a component, and that component is declared in an ng module, and that ng module imports other components and directives, right? So if you change that ng module, or if you change one of the components or directives that are imported in that ng module, that can change the behavior of a component separately than the contents of that file, and with also no imports in that file changing, right? Because the ng module imports the component and not the other way around. And so because of this, that's not really compatible with the way that Vite does its processing. And so as long as ng modules are in the picture, like fully relying on something like Vite for that processing is not really an option. Now with standalone components, that eliminates this problem, right? Because with standalone components, every component and directive is directly importing the other components and directives that it relies on. And so you're able to know just from that file everything else that needs to be changed when something is compiled. I'll say in the long term, it's something that, you know, we get asked a lot and we've thought about it, right? It is a consideration, but we don't have any concrete plans to try to like move Angular CLI build fully on top of Vite.
Yeah, good question. No, I love the question. Skip Van Darken says, is AngularFire library legit? Can I use it to set up Firebase off? Yes, you can. And I wrote some of the documentation for it. So if you got some problems with it, file some issues and we can help to make sure that it gets updated. But yeah, that's totally legit. Totally supported by Google.
Yeah. The Firebase team specifically are the ones who build and maintain AngularFire. And we try to like help consult with them to make sure that it's staying as up to date and things like that as we can.
The fantastic Michael Small says issue 55.115 has Chris Beto and Dylan Hun weighing in on this in the template in reference to for let IDX equals index versus this.idx. So some people are talking about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go take a look at this, right? We'll take a little detour.
Sure. This is fun.
Does anybody else do this where you just like click a random issue and then change the ID?
Yes.
Using this key, we'll use template variables. Yeah. Okay. Yep. That's the bug we saw. Oh, I see. Yeah. So this was, I don't know if this is general knowledge, but recently a few folks on the Angular team, including Dylan here and Miles, they worked on re-implementing Angular's entire template parsing pipeline. And this also includes part of the code that generates JavaScript instructions from templates. And as part of that, you know, there were a lot of bugs with the old implementation, and they actually intentionally ported those bugs over to the new system as is, in order to avoid breaking changes. And this behavior where template variables were kind of taking precedence even with this was a bug in the old system, and that they decided to port that over to the new one in order to avoid breaking changes.
Dang. See, we care about the people. I always tell people when I give talks, I'm like, backwards compatibility is one of our core tenets, for better or for worse. Like, it's just, we have to re-implement a bug to not break people. And it's important though. We care about your success as a community. So, so here's some feedback. Oglerthorpe says, "Oh, I know this icon is from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. One of my favorite episodes of that show, by the way, is when Meatwad wants to call Japan to speak to Godzilla. Hello, Japan. I'm gonna speak to Godzilla." I think that is just some of the funniest writing because it's so absurd. I think you should not be able to create a variable with the same name in both places. This will cause all kinds of problems. So I think that if we officially support the this keyword in the template, like as a thing, I think that as long as you scope it properly, not scope, sorry, but if you qualify it properly with this keyword, I'm fine with it being usable in both places but you shouldn't be able to shadow, because that's the unexpected part, right? The shadowing.
Yeah, I think this is a reasonable conversation to have because, you know, variable shadowing is definitely a thing you can do in most programming languages, at least in JavaScript, TypeScript. And we try to generally keep the semantics of Angular as close as we can to the semantics of TypeScript and JavaScript so that we're not causing too much cognitive dissonance because, you know, that's the code you're writing. So the fact that you can shadow variables in JavaScript, it's like, well, you know, maybe it's also reasonable to shadow variables with our kind of template variables here. So I could see the argument on both sides. It might be something that could be implemented as an optional or opt-in lint check to say, hey, you can't you can't shadow here, like no template variable shadowing. That seems like a pretty good compromise as a lint check because people can opt into it. And it's the kind of thing that fits well with lints where it's like, well, it's not wrong, but it's probably not what you intended to do.
Yeah, totally agree with that. They have actually another great question. Do you all plan on adding something like TSX? So we answered this before, why TSX is not the right fit. I should post a link to that video in the chat.
Yeah, I can talk to this at length because we have had hours and hours and hours of conversation about this topic, including with our like high level leadership inside of Google who ask questions like, why can't Angular use TSX?
Yeah.
And it's a very good question, right? Because TSX has become a very popular choice for not just React, but other frameworks as well, like Solid, that have, made the choice to use the JSX grammar because there is enough kind of mind share for it. And so I can talk about this. I'm just gonna like adjust in my chair a little bit. I know sometimes I see clips of myself from this. I'm like constantly adjusting in my chair and I'm trying to like rein it in, but I'm just very fidgety. So JSX as a grammar, as it is today, like we don't really see it as a great fit for Angular as is. And that's because, JSX was created to line up with the actual like conceptual semantics of React. And if you were like designing a framework like Preact or Solid, where you took from the beginning and said, well, we're going to use JSX, and so that means that we have to design some framework concepts and framework semantics that are in line with that thinking. Like that can work well. But Angular was designed without, something like JSX in mind. And so that means we have these concepts or features in Angular that just really have no good mapping into JSX. In particular, directives are something where there's not really a super ergonomic way that we see to integrate them into like a strictly JSX or TSX grammar. There are ways you could do it, right? Like we have like played around with different things, and I won't get into it here. But in looking at them, we never really been satisfied at what we came up with. They're all kind of compromises, and those compromises actually give you something where like, well, technically this conforms to the grammar of JSX, but it is not a usage pattern of JSX that anybody who's familiar with JSX would immediately understand, right? You're kind of creating a different flavor of JSX that behaves differently, even though it's the same grammar, right? So in a sense, that's even more confusing than just using JSX, because even though it's the same grammar, it behaves differently. And that's not something we think is the kind of like the most optimal outcome for anyone. So knowing all of that, what we can do is look at JSX and say like, hey, this is very popular, right? Developers really like this. And at the same time, we can look at our own template language that we have right now and say like, we've had 10 years of this. What are the friction points, right? Where are the places that this doesn't work as well as it could for developers? And one example of this is the way we use CSS selectors for components and directives as the API for using them. And the benefit of this is that it feels very natural, right? If you know HTML and maybe you're a novice developer, you've just learned HTML, then using CSS selectors, and particularly element names and attributes for adding custom behaviors to elements, is really intuitive. It feels good. And that is, I think, the place that, AngularJS way back came from. Is like, yeah, it feels good. It's like you're just creating a custom element. But the downside of this is that it introduces a level of indirection between the usage site of the component and the actual TypeScript declaration of that thing. So you have in your template, right, some CSS selector like mat checkbox that has like a dash in it. And then somewhere else, you have a mapping of that CSS selector to a TypeScript class, which happens in the component decorator, and then you have a TypeScript import for that class, but you also have a like component level import for that thing, either with standalone import or with ng module. And so that level of indirection can really cause some friction, especially with like attribute directives, because Angular does an error if you have an unknown attribute, since that's a relatively common web developer pattern, right? I'm just going to slap some custom attribute on an element. Angular has no way of really saying like, oh, well, like you meant to put a directive there, but you forgot to import that directive or forgot to import its ng module. And so it just doesn't do what you think. We see this with map button from time to time where people will put like button, map button, and it just renders like a regular native button. You're like, why doesn't it work? And it's like, well, you forgot to import map button module. And so we see this as a friction point. And so if you've watched our Google I/O talk or ngconf keynote from this year, you'll see that we are very seriously looking at having a mechanism for directly using the component's TypeScript symbol in a template instead of a CSS selector, right? And so that might look, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen here, and I'll minimize I'll get rid of my my StreamYard out of there so we're not having infinity mirror. But right now, right, none of this is going to work because I don't have anything imported, right? Where I have like mat checkbox, right? I would be using it like this, and it's like, is open, something like that. Instead of having this CSS selector, like, can we move to like introduce a way of supporting this where we're actually referencing the TypeScript symbol? And we don't exactly have this designed yet, but we have kind of the strong sense that this is a direction we want to explore. There are lots of different ways we could go about doing something like this. One of the ideas I'm fond of at the moment is actually having like an import statement in your template itself. Something like from, path. Well, actually, this would just be like Angular/material/checkbox, right? Like potentially having something like this in the template, right? Don't get too hung up if you don't like this. This is like literally just like spitballing ideas. Nothing on like this is actually like decided or anything like that. We're just in the like brainstorming phase of this. But we do see this as a way to kind of get some of the things that people like about TSX from like incorporated into Angular templates, while also not like doing something that would be like really like a mismatch with Angular's semantics.
Jeremy, let me tell you something. The streets want more let. You got some more energy for some more let examples?
Yeah, of course. What do we want to see? I feel like we've nearly exhausted the well of what there is to show about let.
Nah. So here's what's happening. I think that people feel safe with us trying the weird things that they can think of versus them trying it themselves, because then if they break it, they won't know. You know what I mean? It just feels safer with us doing it. So let's have you put your code back up because we want to try a few things.
Yeah.
Here's one. What are some of the primitive types that let can declare? So just even just showing like variable foo with some primitive types in there could be helpful for people.
So this is really convenient because literally just yesterday I did some like we're working on updating our documentation for templates on angular.dev.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a bullet point in there for documenting everything we support in Angular's expression syntax. Mm-hmm. And I went through and I like wrote a comprehensive list of everything we support in Angular's template expressions. So if I have, some value here, like this can support number literals like 1, 2, 3. It can support Boolean literals like true and false. And so I guess I should actually like show these in the that are working. So I'll just say some value right here, put that in paragraph tags. I'll say some value, right? Some value here is false, right? I can do true, right? Like Boolean literals will work, right? I can do like number literals. I can do string literals. Hello. I can put null, which is going to render nothing. Because again, this is like get stringified. I can put undefined, which I think will, yeah, still also renders the empty string. Although I could see there's an argument to be made that this should actually print out the string undefined. But also, fun fact, undefined is not a literal value, right? So like things like true and like 1, 2, 3, this is like a number literal or a Boolean literal. Null is also like, this isn't like the actual technical term, but you can kind of think of it as a null literal, which is like, it is the null value.
Right. The value is null, whereas undefined literally means there is no value.
But undefined is actually a different thing entirely. Undefined is a global variable, and that global variable contains the value undefined.
JavaScript. Can you do an object literal?
I can do an object literal. So I can say A, 1, 2, 3, B, 4, 5, 6, 5, 6, 7. And that's going to print out object, of course.
Do your JSON pipe.
Also do that into the JSON pipe.
Oh, wait. You got to import the JSON
I
pipe.
know. I got to import common module.
We gotta I don't know. I feel like we can do something.
Yep. And there's, with the JSON pipe, there's our thing. I can put an array literal in here too. So I can just do like 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's going to get printed out too.
All right. So import signal and then create a signal in there.
You can't create a signal in here. Although, like,
try it. Prove it.
So, like, the way that this works, right? Like, if I were to write, like, we'll just talk through this, right? If I put like, signal 1, 2, 3 here, that's not going to work, right? And that's because signal is not a property on the component, and it's not a variable here, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Angular templates don't have full access to the scope, like, the module scope of the class here. So even if I were to import signal here, this is not something that is automatically exposed here. Now,
you don't do the value of a signal.
Don't do this at home. But if I were to say this dot, I'll say like signal equals signal, where like I'm declaring a class property named signal and assigning it to this signal. If I were to do that, that should work. Yeah. And if I do that, this is going to print out nothing, I think, because whoops.
It's a function
I think signal doesn't have a toString, right? Or its toString is just going to nothing or something like that.
Okay, so can you toss another parentheses on there so we can get 1, 2, 3? Yeah. I meant on line 19 though. Can you right there? Yep.
What do you want me to do?
Put parentheses right there.
Like that?
Like invocation, yep. And then take the one off of some value.
Why would you do that?
Just, experimentation. There, so it does work. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because we just invoked the signal that we created. We immediately invoked it. I just want to see how weird you can get. But listen, friends at home, if you're seeing this, he declared signal like as a class property. That is not something in the template, because I feel like somebody's going to see a snippet of this. It's like, see, you can do a signal. No, do not do this.
Do this at all.
Bad. Do not do it. But good question, friends. Thank you for these questions. So I just went through a whole bunch of the different variations of questions that people were asking.
All right, we're getting rid of that. We're going to hide all of our shame.
All right. So we answered this. If you can do objects, we did that already. What else? This is a good one. Can I use this let variable as a fallback between ng content? If you declare it first.
Sure, why not? So what we can do here, we'll have to create another component. We'll say export class, some components.
Oh, it's a lot of comments. Hold on, Jeremy.
Template. Let's see. I don't know. Some component. ng content, and we'll have to create a variable here. So we'll say like let some variable equals 1, 2, 3. You can assign this to whatever you want. And then just like some variable here is fallback content.
Right.
And so this actually is going to need to go up top. No hoisting for classes. And then this is going to import some component. I forgot to make it standalone. We really got to change that standalone to default true soon. It's time. And then we can come here and we'll say some components, and we're not going to project anything because we want to see that fallback content. And there's some component 1, 2, 3. So yeah, you can
show me your fallback code again. There you go. So yeah, right. Yep. Looks good.
We'll say like fallback.
Yeah.
There's that fallback. And once again, my IDE is showing this as red because WebStorm hasn't been updated for this new syntax yet.
Oh, this is a good thing. Can we do a session on SSR and ISR? Well, Ania from the Angular community wrote a nice blog on ISR and SSR. We can do one in the future. We can do a stream where maybe we can invite like Jessica Janik or something and like do some SSR streams.
We should definitely bring in Jessica or someone else on the team to talk about server-side rendering, since they've been much more actively working on it, and they'll be able to speak more eloquently than myself.
Hey, do not do this, Donald. Forget you saw it. Do not do this. Erase that from memory. Where's the what do you call that? You know, the Men in Black little neuralizer.
The neuralizer,
yeah, like to get the thing out of there. No, don't forget it. Don't use it. Let's see, do it all the time with it. Don't worry, do it all the time with enums. Don't do bad stuff with enums. Okay, so we got a lot of questions. We had like 17 or more questions. I think we can start answering.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so we can just talk. But if we want to go back to code, I will.
Yeah,
I will do that.
Not enough. Okay, let's see. What's our take on AnalogJS coming from Nux and SvelteKit? I'm really missing things like file-based routing. Use AnalogJS then. If you want file-based routing.
Yeah, I'll say like generally, we love like Angular community projects, and we think Analog is a great one. We gave it a shout out in both our ngconf and Google I/O talks, and we think if it is solving a problem for you, then go ahead and pick it up, try it out.
Yeah.
The Angular team is only so big, and we can't do everything ourselves. And so having community kind of pick up the torch on some of these needs that people are having, or like features or platforms, like it's great to see. That said, maybe we will add file-based routing to Angular CLI someday. It has certainly been proposed many times, but we'll see.
Yeah, good question. Is there any reason to still use input decorator over signal input?
So technically, the signal-based input is still in developer preview. I feel like I'm required contractually to point that out. So there is a small chance that there might be some changes to signal-based inputs because they're not yet stable, still developer preview. That said, I would use signal-based inputs for any code I was writing.
What about with setters? Because Evgeny brings a good point that you can do setters with input.
Yeah, we generally think that that's a pattern that you shouldn't really need with signal-based inputs, right? For like anything that you're doing with setters on an input, you would instead accomplish either by using a computed, if you are like, for example, using that setter to create a computed value from the value that was set, like you should use a computed for that, or with an effect, where if you're doing some kind of imperative side effect in that setter, like logging it or like making a network request or something like that, that is what you should use an effect for. And we think that using those APIs instead of the setter actually makes your code a lot easier to follow because you're being very explicit about what you're doing rather than just kind of shoving everything into a setter.
That's right. Okay, let's see. I have a small doubt here. In the Angular signal docs, it mentions that signals are getter functions. Calling them reads their values. Is it okay? Signals are getter functions. Yes.
Yeah,
It's okay.
that's right. They are functions and they get a value. So getter functions.
And let me add this. It is okay to use them in your template too. Like, don't worry about the getter function called in your template.
Yeah. It's really interesting that this practice has kind of come as like, we'll call it like tribal knowledge among Angular developers of like, oh, you shouldn't call functions and templates. And that advice never actually came from the Angular team. Our perspective has always been like, well, yeah, you can call functions in your templates. That's the whole point of being able to call functions in your templates. And the problem comes in is if you're calling a function that is actually doing something that is costly.
Right.
And
yeah.
It feels like from our perspective is like we don't want to throw the whole feature away just because there are ways to use it that are suboptimal. And, I understand the motivation for a lot of developers to be like, well, I don't have a good way of knowing whether a function is expensive or not. And so I'm just going to blanket ban this, even though it could be useful in a lot of cases. But in the case of signals and computeds specifically, like these are designed to be called in the template. That is how they're meant to be used. So you shouldn't have any qualms about doing that.
Love it. Okay, let's wrap it. Some couple of the questions. Jeremy, we've been on for an hour already. Can you believe that? We got 2,100 viewers. Jeremy, do you remember when we started this thing and we would get like 60 viewers and it was like we were super happy with that and like so grateful, and now we got like over 2,000 viewers. That's pretty awesome. Pretty excited. So thank you all to the community. Thanks for watching.
Of course.
All right.
I would do this more.
Don't say that because okay, just hold on. I'm gonna come back to your question. So here's what's happening. So I had some conversations with some Google developer experts for Angular, and they're like, "Man, we would love to watch you all and learn from you all as you implement some of the like internal features." And I was like, we had Jeremy on who did this before. He did this. He was working on the TypeScript class thing on Air, and then I was like, Alex Rickabaugh has also mentioned wanting to do something like this. So, Jeremy, I want to do as many of these as you want to do and as Alex wants to do, but I just don't want to burn you out. I don't want you where you don't want to come back.
So I really enjoy doing this. I like streaming, but I have a lot of other things I also need to do.
Yeah.
Right. Like my day leading up to this stream, I've been in meetings for like 4 hours already today.
Yeah. No, it's hard. It is hard. So I think what always surprises people is how much work we get done, at this group. And it's because we all work hard. Because people used to complain that we would be doing this instead of working. I'm like, you don't understand how much work we do. All we do is work. Like, this is a fun thing we get to do with the community. Like, well, how could you be wasting your time? Okay. Anyway, rant over. Emmanuel says, talking about starting a new project. Angular comes now by default with no property access from index signature enabled in tsconfig. Any comments on why?
It's a best practice. So let's say it's a long name. So let's dissect it. No property access from index signature enabled. What does that mean? Right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again over here. So let's say I have a type.
I take a class from you, by the way, Jeremy. If you were a college professor, I'd take a class from you because it seems like you have a really good way of breaking down complex problems.
This is just how my brain working out loud.
Yeah, this is good. I like this.
So let's say I have some record here, which what we can do is just say oh, this is record string to number. And what this is actually going to map to, or just assign that to an object like that. This is actually equivalent to, see if I can actually get the syntax right off the top of my head, but I think it's key of string to number. Is that right? Yeah. So these two things are equivalent, right? Saying like record string number is the same as like having an object that has a like string key that gives you a number. And so we'll just use the record type since that's a little bit cleaner.
Cool.
And so we've got, you know, some function in here. And in here, if I try to say, you know, console.log this dot some record of some key, this is fine, right? This is me using this type as I have declared, where I'm saying like, I accept, let me just put that back. I want to like, keep the, all right. I'm gonna put this back just to have like a comment of what this means. So me specifying a string key here in this property, like I forget the exact technical name of this, but this is like a property access operator. This is me, like, see how like this and this line up, right? Like this is me using the type as I have described it to TypeScript. Now, if I were to instead say dot some key, this is going to now give me an error with this on where it says, you know, some key comes from an index signature, so it must be accessed with some key. And so the problem here is I'm trying to use this record differently than what I've described to TypeScript, right? I'm saying I want to access this with a string key, but instead I'm like reading it as if it is a static property that is always going to exist on this object. And so TypeScript is correctly here reporting this as a type mismatch, right? The way you're trying to use it doesn't match up with the way that you told TypeScript you're going to use it. You can alternatively, right? Like you can say I have an index key here. So I'm going to actually like take this and put it like this here and bring that back. I can add additional properties here. So I can say, some key here is a number. And when I do this, I'm telling TypeScript, like, I can, hold on. Oh, yeah, I actually have to, I'll just mark this as optional. What is this? It's not assignable. Oh, sure, number or undefined. Oh, I see these two. These two things are incompatible, so. Sorry, I'm just like some key one. There we go. So this is fine. So when I'm doing this, I'm saying this object, some record, has both an index accessor by a string, and it also has an explicit property called some key. And so when I do that, now my usage here matches what I'm telling TypeScript this object looks like. But if I were to do this to like another key, this is going to fail because I didn't say that that property explicitly exists. But if I say like I've got some index signature here, then this is fine because it matches what I told TypeScript this object looks like. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. No, it does. That's a good answer. Okay, we got to keep going because we got a lot of questions. A lot of people still want to know stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see, Jeremy, Tomer, thank you for being so patient on this one. It's been a while since you asked this. Why does ng component outlet directive allow to pass inputs but no outputs?
It should allow you to set outputs. We should add that.
So post submit an issue on GitHub so we keep track of this idea.
There probably is one there already. So
okay.
Part of the reason for this, reason is a strong word here, but when
we arrived here.
Yeah, how we arrived here is when you create a component dynamically, like with code, right? Not using ng component outlet, it is giving you back something called a component ref. And component ref does have an API for setting inputs, but it doesn't have an API for listening to outputs on that component. And that's honestly just an oversight, right? It should have been added, I think, in the beginning. And we've actually had conversations just, I think, in the last week about adding a listen function to component ref to listen to outputs. So we are probably going to add something like that. And when we do, it should also be added to ng component outlet.
Good. good. That's a good question. A good feature. Let's see. State manager. What about state manager? So let me take a step at this one. So when it comes to state management in general in Angular, so there's lots of fantastic community solutions, and it depends on where you are with your state management needs. So if you have already a really well-defined application with really complex needs, and you kind of know what you do, just go ahead and use one of the tools that are out there. But if you're like starting out, I think that you can get really far with signals in the service if you're trying to like just define your state. And I think that's a good place to start. And then once you outgrow that, or if you outgrow that solution, I would say then look at some of the fantastic things that are already out there for the community. There are lots. There's Akita. There's NX. What is it?
NGRX.
NGRX. Thank you. And then there's NGXS.
Yeah.
And then there's like a bunch of these.
There's a bunch of these.
Yeah, they're out there.
Something I think I was talking about earlier, where it's like, the Angular team is only so many people, and we can't do everything directly in Angular. And so that's why we have our amazing community that can help fill in the gaps and like see where there's developer need and work on other open source projects. And state management is an area where for now we think it's really great that the community has really kind of like put so much effort and investment into this problem space. So our focus on the Angular team is by building lower level primitives that like third-party and community state management solutions can build on top of. And by those low-level primitives, I mostly mean signals. So signal, computed, and effect, we think are like the thing that make the most sense for us to do as building blocks for like more sophisticated state management solutions to build on top of.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
We are interested in exploring some sort of like slightly higher level concept of a store in Angular itself. We don't really have a sense of what that would look like yet, but we kind of just see the need for it. So that's something we're interested in exploring further, but that is probably as far as it would go. And also, Mark, I just realized I have the power to highlight questions now.
Yeah.
Now I actually have a login for StreamYard. So
I actually tagged that question for you because I thought it was a really good one. So go ahead.
So this question is there any advice on learning about low-level stuff like the TypeScript compiler APIs? So I wanted to highlight this in particular because I have done some work with the TypeScript compiler API when I was working on writing some tooling for extracting API reference documentation from Angular source code, which is what you see on angular.dev now. And the way I learned to use the TypeScript compiler API was by importing it and going into my IDE and like, type checker dot, and then it would auto-complete all the functions, and I would just arrow through them and be like, that one sounds about what I want, and I would try it out, and then it would or wouldn't do what I wanted. So completely trial and error. And there's also a little bit of, we have other folks on the Angular team who have more experience working with these APIs, and I would sometimes ask them. I would try asking some AI tools every once in a while, and at that time, this was a while ago, it mostly hallucinated functions that didn't exist. And then one last thing I'll mention about like the TypeScript API in particular, there is a tool that I will show off really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
This is a tool, TS-AST Viewer, TypeScript AST Viewer. This is so phenomenally useful. This is like so necessary if you are working with the TypeScript AST. So, I'll write something here. Export.
Wait, you got to zoom in, Jeremy.
Yeah, sure. So export class, user profile, like name string equals Alice, right? This gives you a visualization of the whole TypeScript AST, and we can see like, okay, there's an export keyword, an identifier for user profile, a property declaration, and like we can dig into all of the properties of this thing. This is invaluable if you are working with the TypeScript AST. Like, I don't know that it would be possible to like do half the stuff we do without this tool. In terms of like other, you use just the TypeScript compiler API as an example. So I can talk about that one specifically because I have worked on it. But for other things, there's really just no substitute for getting in there and getting your hands dirty and trying to build something. And, only through struggle comes learning. So that is probably my recommendation, is just try doing something and see how far you get, and reach for whatever tools you can find that help with that.
All right. Any implications on NG Material with the Material Web Components team shifting to maintenance mode? And then with Wiz Angular merger, I'm not sure how accurate this is. So yeah, so a couple of things here, and Jeremy, I'm going to tag you in on this one. But first, there's an article that says that the whole thing was about Wiz Angular merger and 9 to 5 Google, which was I'm not sure how accurate that was.
No.
Was it? That's what I was like. I don't want to disparage them. I'm just saying I'm not sure that the reporting was correct on that, but they did for Material Web Components. MWC are shifting to maintenance mode, right? So how does that impact us on Angular Material? So I got a blog coming out, Jeremy.
Yeah.
About
we could say like we have a blog coming out to talk about this, and we don't necessarily have to dig into it much more right now because we have like a specific message that we're working on.
That's right. That's right.
The main thing I will say right here is that like Angular Material is not going anywhere. We're continuing to work on it, and we don't expect it to be impacted significantly by anything going on with the material design team at Google. So that I can at least offer that reassurance as the like Angular Material is still going to be here. We're still going to work on it the same as we always have. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a question about what's in 2024 is the path for like learning. I'm trying to figure out what happened to it. There's a question about that. They're a beginner and want to know how to learn. Here it is. What is roadmap for Angular learning in 2024? So go to angular.dev, go to tutorials, and then start with the tutorial there. That tutorial is a roadmap right there. Like that's what we think are the core essential things to learn to get started. And then you can expand your learning from that point of view. Yeah, I think that'll work for you. Just start there. Start there.
Yeah, I want to add a lot more tutorials to angular.dev too.
Oh, it's coming. Jeremy, have you seen how we've been cooking lately with like content? Like,
I mean, I saw your plan for the stuff we wanted to add. I haven't seen anything that has been enacted on that plan yet.
That's because, so many people. There's only so many people. Keep that. But we're making progress, though. We are making progress. Let's see.
Honestly, I could sit down for like 3 months and do nothing but work on documentation and tutorials and examples, and it still wouldn't be enough.
And then we would lose so much of your valuable leadership, which, so I'm going to say this. Jeremy's leadership is invaluable, and I think he and some of the other team leads have done an amazing job of guiding us to where we are now with Angular. So he's going to deflect this compliment, but I'm not going to let him because I'm not talking to him. I'm talking to you all at home. So Jeremy's excellent. He's a fantastic leader, and I am very happy about his leadership of the team and some of our other team leads and how they're helping us get to where we want to be with Angular. So don't deflect it. You don't have to acknowledge I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to the people.
How dare you?
How dare you? How dare you? Let's answer this one. This is a good one. Any update to merge Angular and Wiz? Can we expect a new framework, or is it still Angular?
It's still Angular. So one of the things I feel like kind of gets lost in the like bigger conversation around this Angular Wiz combining is that this is like a 10-year project.
Like long term. It just people keep forgetting how long term this project is.
Right. And so, I'm 37 right now. I might be 47 before we, right? Like I know I say 10 years and it's easy in your head to just be like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, no, I mean like 10 years of my life, right? I will be a decade older before I would expect this to be like, to the point where it's like, yeah, we have fully converged these things into one framework. And the way that we're approaching it is by finding commonality between the two and then refactoring out into lower level primitives that both frameworks can use. And so we've done this, right, with signals. Like signals is the like perfect example of this, where, you know, we spent a ton of time doing research and development on signals for Angular, for, you know, reactivity in general, and landing on signals and looking at all of the other signal implementations and how do we want to do them. And Wiz, coincidentally, at the same time was like, yeah, well, like we also want a reactivity system. And we think all of like the research you did was great. Can we just use the same signals primitives? And we said, yes. And so like we were able to take that like core of the reactivity experience and just use it in both places. And kind of the next step was like, okay, Wiz has this library that they call JS Action. And we're like, hey, we want something like that too. We want to be able to have this kind of event delegation system, that's like deferred event system, and let's move that into open source and like do some refactoring so that it works for Angular. And like again, this has been like a success, right? We are now using this in both you know, Angular and Wiz. And coincidentally, like in doing this work, some of the engineers working on the project were able to realize some improvements to this that actually like made significant improvements to this JS Action library for all like existing customers who were using this for like Wiz inside of Google already, right? So just by looking at this, you know, relatively old code that was in Google, like, you know, that wasn't getting a lot of attention at the moment, and like putting new attention on it, doing some refactorings and cleanup, we saw improvements. So that was cool as well. And the next thing we're looking at is dependency injection. We're saying like, hey, you know, Wiz has a dependency injection, Angular has a dependency injection system. How do we like refactor out the common parts of that makes sense to share between them? And, you know, we're still in the early phases of this, but we plan to kind of just keep doing this, right? Of saying like, hey, you know, we have a rendering system, you have a rendering system. How do we like get the common parts of this? And just like keep doing that incrementally, piece by piece. And, you know, we will get to points eventually where it's like, like this is a big line, right? This is like a hard jump over a chasm to like bring these two things together. And those will be hard parts of this process. But I'm very confident that we will be able to bridge them, because every time so far we've had a conversation where we're like, oh boy, like this seems challenging. How are we going to do this? And then we sit down and talk for 3 hours and it's like, okay, we have a plan. So what that means for you as Angular developers is that like largely you'll just see this as Angular continuing to evolve and get new features. And sometimes like we will refactor the code so that something Angular is doing is refactored out into like a lower level primitive, but the actual way that you engage with Angular mostly stays the same. And we expect kind of that process to just continue for years to come. I saw a question in here.
Before we go forward, I want to clarify something just to not give the wrong idea. Somebody said they were just saying that they hope that we get paid for our work to do this. This is a part of our jobs. Oh, yeah. I was saying that community people were complaining that we were live streaming instead of working, not Google. Google loves that we do this. We get great feedback from our team that we do this, that we get to connect with people. But people in the community were complaining that we do this, and we're like, you should be making more code. And we're like, hey, we're having a good time with the community. So, and thanks for all the positive feedback that you folks want to make sure that, you know, this thing goes strong. It may, you know, turn something else later, but go ahead, Jeremy, please.
I have a few I'm going to highlight real quick. So there's a question, can we see Wiz syntax? You can, because many years ago, there was like some attempt to try to open source what Wiz looked like. So this is super out of date now, but there's an open source project you can find that's called Closure Templates. And if you look at that, you'll get like a rough sense of like writing Wiz templates look like. It's not exactly the same, right? Like Wiz has evolved a lot since that was open sourced, and it never really, you know, kept up to date over time, but that will give you like maybe a rough sense of what it looked like. And then I think someone also said this, says, how dare I be the same age as you and look younger? Recommendation for everyone, daily moisturizing sunscreen. If you're not putting sunscreen on your face every day, that sun, it's messing you up, damaging your skin cells.
I actually don't disagree with that. I would actually like to add, because people ask about my skin sometimes. I say cold water. I wash my face with cold water. My wife gets really upset that I don't use like, a specific skin thing, but I just use cold water. But the sunscreen, I've heard that from another person who was, I'm older than everybody. It was fine. But he was, close to my age. He's like, yeah, I use sunscreen every day. And I was like, every day, even if there's not like a hot day you're outside, like, no, every day I use sunscreen.
Yeah, this is part of my routine. I brush my teeth. I put on face sunscreen.
Wait, check this out. This person says, Wim Hof, Mark Hoff. Oh, wait, can I show y'all something?
Your cold immersion tank?
Cold immersion with my face. This is a MX Master original mouse. It just died. It didn't fully die, but it kind of died. The scroll wheel now is like super sensitive. It's like twitchy sensitive. So whenever I write slides and stuff, it keeps changing the slide. It's really horrible. So now I have a 3S and it is beautiful. But I'm just saying, rest in peace to my MX Master original. I love that mouse. And now I get this one, a 3S. Okay. That didn't matter to anybody but me, but I know people like to know what we're talking about. Okay. Do we have time for a few more questions?
Lightning round.
Okay. Let's see.
Right.
Go ahead.
Any updates on Signal support for reactive forms? We want to do it. It is in the like roadmap. It's in the to-do list. We just haven't gotten to it yet. We will get there.
Yeah, I'll pick one real quick. Where can I find English tutorials, please? SoloLearn app or some other place you recommend? SoloLearn has a free course, but you can also go to, I'm going to put it in the chat, angular.dev/tutorials. And that'll give you a good start. And then go to the YouTube channel. We have a Learning Angular video, that set of videos you can watch. Great question.
We see.
Oops, sorry. Sorry. Go ahead.
This one says, more RFCs. We have 2 RFCs active right now. So go give your feedback on those RFCs. I will say we just had a meeting about the DOM RFC. So we have an RFC about the way that people interact with the DOM in Angular. We had a meeting about that this morning to kind of go over all of the feedback. And we kind of like outlined here's the response that we think we're gonna, we want to give. So expect to see a response on that RFC with kind of like our synthesis of all of that feedback and what we think the next steps are going to be. So that hopefully in like maybe a week or so.
Jeremy, say something.
Plans to add date time picker in Angular material. Maybe. So here, I will be like totally honest on this one, which is some people on the team really want to add this stuff. But at the same time, there's some hesitance to increase the scope of Angular material because it's really hard to maintain Angular material. It's a lot of work to add more components and increase the scope of what we're doing because of the way that Google's internal code repository works.
Yeah.
Anytime we make a change to the styles for a component, it breaks a lot of teams inside of Google that have CSS overrides, or we have screenshot testing inside of Google. So if we change the border radius on a button, something that simple, it will break all of the screenshot goals, all of screenshot tests that hundreds of teams have. And so we have to kind of reconcile that. And so as we increase the scope of the project with more components and more features, it becomes harder to make changes over time. And so it's a challenge to balance new features versus making sure the team can actually handle the maintenance cost of those features over time.
Let me ask you a different question then, Jeremy, related to this. Is there any feeling about a CDK time picker versus material time picker?
So one of the ideas that we're trying to look more into, and this is kind of an active area investigation, is building out more kind of CDK primitives. So we already have things like menu, list box. We'd like to build out things like a combo box and grid and tabs, and give you much better documentation and tutorials about how to take those CDK things and style them to however you want them to look and say like, hey, you want to build a time picker? Here's how you take CDK combo box and turn it into a time picker in like 50 lines of code. So these are things we're thinking about, and like we're trying to figure out like what is the best way for us to give more features to developers and to like help them build the UIs they're trying to build, while also having the maintenance of that be sustainable for the size of the team that we have.
Yeah, it's good. I think we got time for maybe one more, Jeremy. I'm going to pick one for you unless you see one.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, I don't know too much about this. Can Angular AOT compiler work alongside TS Loader, ES Build to compile different parts of the app?
I don't really understand what this question is asking.
Are you still around async YT? If you are, if you could quickly comment. If you're still around, I understand if you're not around anymore. In the meantime, let's go here then. When are we going to have Angular support in Bun?
I don't know anything about this.
Okay.
I know that Bun exists. I have a general
I feel
sense
like
of
somebody
what it is,
said something about Bun. I don't know what they said, but we can follow up though. I've been unable to use HTMX inside any of my Angular projects. What is the Angular team's thoughts?
I need more info. Like I don't know what works, what wouldn't work.
Got it.
I know like kind of about HTMX at a high level, but I'm not familiar with the actual like syntax of it or the behavior, so I don't know what wouldn't work.
Let's jump to this one. What are your thoughts on React server components? Interesting for Angular SSR's future?
We have talked about the idea of introducing something like server-only components for Angular, but I don't know. Stay tuned. We're like actively working on the SSR space, and one of the things I'll say is like we are never going to just like say like, hey, React server components, right? Let's make Angular server components, right? We try to frame this. We try to think about this in terms of like, what is the problem that we want to solve, and what is the way to like capture the developer's intent and help them accomplish their intent in the most streamlined way possible, and within the ecosystem that we have already. And so that's kind of how we end up with something like the defer syntax, where it's not exactly like anything else in any other framework, but it's trying to like solve the same kind of problem that other frameworks are solving with different things. So I could see us trying to solve the same problems that React server components solve, but probably like not something that is like 100% the same thing, right? Or something that's a very close analog. And did we lose Mark? Oh.
No, I was like coughing and I couldn't stop coughing. And so I had to go off the screen for a second. Let's see. Material 18 lacks a lot of documentation. Working on it. So good thing. Thank you, Tomer. I appreciate that. I'm okay. Drew, I appreciate it. I did. Man, I act like I passed away. No, I didn't pass away. We're all good. Thank you for caring, though. Yeah, I think we're out of time. It's 2:30. I actually got to jump to some meetings. But hey, friends at home, let me ask Jeremy one quick question before I talk to you. Jeremy, what should they watch? What should they play? What should they read?
Oh boy, I just played and beat a game called Mini Shoot Adventures, which is like a mashup of like Zelda and like shoot 'em up and bullet hell, and I liked it a lot. It was a relatively short indie game, so I recommend that. Go check it out.
Anything to watch?
Dropout.tv is really like, and that and Taskmaster is like the main things I've been watching lately.
Okay, wait. Oh, I'm gonna die again. Look at the see Angular start dying. I know. I feel like it's good. Okay, and then anything to read?
Reading. I just started reading The 3-Body Problem, which I know I'm years behind on that, and I'm not liking it a lot so far. I'm willing to stick it out, but it's not really landing with me.
Okay. Well, friends, there you have it. Thanks again for coming out. You don't understand how much this means to us, but we are so happy that you spend time with us. For my co-host, Jeremy, I've been Mark Thompson, Mark Texan online. And do us a big, big favor, no matter what you do, no matter which framework you use, go build great apps. We'll see you the next time.